She was 7 months pregnant, standing alone in a hotel lobby with $12 in her purse and nowhere to go. Her husband had just changed the locks on their home, the home she helped pay for, the company she helped build with her grandmother's inheritance. He erased every trace of her contribution. The $47,000 she invested, gone. The 6 years she spent supporting his dreams, forgotten. And now the woman wearing a $12,000 necklace that should have been hers was calling security to drag her out like a criminal. No one is coming to save you, the mistress laughed. You pushed everyone away. You have nothing.
I believe
You are
expecting
nothing.
us, Vanessa.
But here
Or
is what that
perhaps someone
mistress
else.
did not know. She did not know about the backup documents hidden for years. She did not know about the dead mother's bank accounts still receiving transfers. She did not know about the $4.7 million in hidden assets waiting to be discovered. And she definitely did not know about the two men stepping off that elevator. Two brothers. Two CEOs. Two very powerful men who had been waiting 6 years to protect their sister. What happened next made that mistress regret every single word she ever said. This is the story of Elena Marshall, a pregnant wife thrown out with nothing who fought back and won everything. Stay until the end, because the way she destroys her cheating husband is something you will never forget. But this story is more than revenge. It's a blueprint for every woman who has ever been told she's worthless, who has been isolated from her family, who has watched everything she built be stolen by someone she trusted. If you've ever felt trapped, powerless, or alone in a relationship where the person who promised to love you became the one destroying you, this story will change how you see your own situation. Watch closely, because the strategies Elena used, they're real, they work, and they might just save your life someday. The marble floors of the Meridian Hotel gleamed under crystal chandeliers that had witnessed 1,000 power plays, 1,000 whispered deals, 1,000 moments where fortunes changed hands and lives pivoted on single decisions. But none of those moments were quite like this one. Elena Marshall stood in the center of that lobby, 7 months pregnant with twins, her hands trembling at her sides despite every effort to keep them still. She had no money in her purse beyond a few crumpled dollars. Her phone had been shut off 2 days ago when Marcus stopped paying the bill. She had no one to call, even if she could. Her husband had changed the locks on their house that very morning, the house she had helped pay for with her grandmother's inheritance, the house where 2 cribs sat waiting in a nursery she had spent weeks decorating. And now she faced the woman who had helped him do it all. Vanessa Cole stood 15 feet away, one perfectly manicured finger hovering over her Bluetooth earpiece, ready to summon security at a moment's notice. She wore a blood-red dress that hugged her figure in all the right places, the kind of dress that cost more than most people's monthly rent and was designed to make other women feel small and inadequate. Her smile was the smile of a cat who had cornered a particularly helpless mouse and was now savoring the moment before the kill. Security is already on their way, Vanessa announced, her voice carrying across the lobby with practiced confidence that came from years of getting exactly what she wanted. You have maybe 60 seconds before they drag you out of here like the crazy person you are. I'd start walking if I were you, but then again, I've always had more dignity than you. Elena felt the baby's kick, a synchronized movement that reminded her she was not just fighting for herself anymore. Twins, a boy and a girl, the doctor had said. 2 lives growing inside her, while her own life crumbled around her like wet sand beneath an incoming tide. What's wrong, Ms. Marshall? Vanessa tilted her head, mock concern dripping from every carefully articulated syllable. No one coming to save you? No white knight riding to your rescue? I guess that's what happens when you spend 6 years pushing everyone away. Marcus told me all about it, you know. How you alienated your entire family. How you don't have a single friend left in the world. how you drove everyone away with your paranoia and your jealousy. She stepped closer, close enough that Elena could smell her perfume, something floral and expensive that Elena recognized from Marcus's shirts and jackets over the past 2 years. He tried so hard to make it work with you. He really did. But some women just can't be helped. Some women are so broken that they destroy everything they touch. And now look at you, standing in a hotel lobby, pregnant and alone, about to be escorted out, like a vagrant. How the mighty have fallen. Elena said nothing. What could she say? Everything Vanessa said contained just enough truth to cut deep. She had pushed her family away. She had let Marcus isolate her from everyone who cared about her. She had believed his lies about her brothers being toxic, about her friends being jealous, about everyone except him being the enemy. She had done this to herself, in a way. She had handed him the knife and helped him cut every rope that might have saved her. Behind them, the elevator dinged. Vanessa's smile flickered for just a moment, a tiny crack in her perfect composure, before returning stronger than before. She expected security guards, men in dark blazers who would grip Elena's arms and march her out the front door, while hotel guests watched and whispered. She expected the final humiliation of a woman who had dared to fight back against her own destruction. But the men who stepped out of that elevator were not wearing blazers. They wore suits that cost more than most cars, Italian wool and custom tailoring, the kind of quiet luxury that screamed power louder than any logo or label ever could. They moved with the easy confidence of men who had never once doubted their place in any room they entered. And they were definitely not security. Elena turned to look at them, and for the first time in 6 years she saw her brothers. Derek Kingsley stood 6'3", with the build of a man who had started his career swinging a hammer on construction sites before he started signing contracts worth millions. His shoulders were broad, his hands were calloused despite his expensive suit, and his face was the kind of unreadable that made poker players nervous. But his eyes, when they found Elena's, held something that made her chest ache with a pain she had not allowed herself to feel in years. Marcus Kingsley Jr., whom everyone called Mark, stood beside him, leaner than his older brother, with the easy charm of a man who could sell ice to penguins and convince them they were getting a bargain. His smile was famous in business circles, disarming and warm, but underneath that charm was something sharper, something that made people very nervous when they caught a glimpse of it beneath the surface. Neither brother was smiling now. Vanessa's composure cracked visibly this time. Her perfect smile faltered, her confident posture stiffened, and her finger froze over the earpiece she had been so ready to use. "Who the hell are you?" Elena straightened her spine. For the first time in months, possibly years, she felt something other than despair and exhaustion. She felt the ghost of the woman she used to be before Marcus Marshall had convinced her that her family was toxic, that her brothers were controlling and manipulative, that she needed to cut them out of her life completely to build something new with him. "These are my brothers," Elena said, and her voice did not shake. "Derek Kingsley, CEO of Kingsley Construction. Marcus Kingsley Jr., CEO of Greenhall Logistics." She watched Vanessa's face change as the other woman processed what she was hearing. Kingsley. Elena's maiden name. The name she had given up when she married Marcus Marshall and believed all his beautiful, poisonous lies about how her family had never supported her, had never wanted her to be happy, had tried to control her entire life. Vanessa had never known Elena had brothers. Marcus had made very sure of that. He had erased them from Elena's life so completely that even the woman sharing his bed had no idea they existed. But Vanessa was about to learn that some mistakes cannot be undone. Some bridges, once burned, leave behind people who know how to build new ones. And some women who seem completely alone are only alone because they have not yet remembered who they really are. I don't care who you are, Vanessa said, but her voice had lost its confident edge. Security will be here any moment, and all three of you can be escorted out together. This is private property, and none of you have any right to be here. Derek spoke for the first time. His voice was low and calm. The kind of calm that came from absolute certainty about his place in the world. Actually, this hotel uses Kingsley Construction for all their renovation work. We just finished the new conference center last month. I called the owner on the way over here, and he was very interested to hear about the woman threatening his business partner's sister in his lobby. Vanessa's eyes darted to the concierge desk. The staff members who had been ready to call security were suddenly very interested in their computer screens, their phones, anything except the confrontation happening in the center of their lobby. Mark stepped forward, and his voice was pleasant in a way that somehow made it more threatening than if he had shouted. Ms. Cole, my sister has offered you a deal. I strongly suggest you take it, because the alternative is going to be very, very unpleasant for everyone involved, especially you. 72 hours earlier, the penthouse apartment occupied the entire 34th floor of the Meridian residential tower. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered views of the city skyline that real estate agents called breathtaking and that Elena had stopped seeing months ago. She moved through the space like a ghost, her footsteps silent on floors that cost more than her mother's entire house. The apartment was always cold. Marcus liked it that way. He said the cold kept him sharp, kept his mind focused. Elena had learned to wear sweaters indoors, to wrap herself in blankets when she sat on the designer couch that looked beautiful but was not actually comfortable for anyone who wanted to relax. At 31 years old, Elena should have had everything. She was married to Marcus Marshall, the rising star of regional logistics, whose face had appeared on the cover of 3 business magazines in the past year alone. His company, Marshall Logistics, had just hit a $40 million valuation. They were expecting twins in 2 months. The nursery alone had cost more than most people earned in a year, with custom furniture from Italy and hand-painted murals on every wall. But Elena could not remember the last time her husband had looked at her when he spoke, could not remember the last time he had asked about her day, her thoughts, her feelings, could not remember the last time he had touched her with anything resembling affection rather than obligation. She found the receipt while hanging up his jacket that evening. It fell from the pocket like a confession, a small piece of white paper that fluttered to the dark marble countertop and changed everything. Tiffany & Company, $12,000. A necklace described in elegant font as 18-karat white gold with diamond pendant, 47 stones, 2.3 carats, total weight. Elena had never received a necklace from Tiffany's. Not for their anniversary, not for Christmas, not for her birthday, not when she told him she was pregnant after 3 years of trying, not for any reason at all. She held the receipt in her hand and told herself there was an explanation. There had to be an explanation. Marcus handled accounts all over the country. He gave gifts to clients, to partners, to important contacts. It was part of doing business at his level. But $12,000 was a lot of money for a client gift, and the receipt was dated 2 weeks ago, which meant she should have heard about it if it was legitimate business. Marcus always mentioned big expenses, always complained about how much it cost to keep clients happy. He had not mentioned this. That evening, Marcus came home at 9:30, 2 hours later than he had promised. He smelled like perfume, something floral and expensive that Elena did not recognize, because she had stopped wearing perfume months ago. Certain scents made her nauseous during the pregnancy, and Marcus had never once commented on the change. She waited until he had poured himself a drink, until he had settled into his chair with his phone in his hand, before she spoke. "I found a receipt today, from Tiffany's." He did not look up from his phone. "Client gift, the Henderson account. They're signing a 3-year contract next week, and Mrs. Henderson collects jewelry. It's an investment in the relationship." It was for a necklace, a woman's necklace, diamond pendant. "Yes, like I said, for Mrs. Henderson. You usually tell me about big client gifts." Now he looked up. His eyes were cold in a way that still surprised her, even after years of marriage. There had been a time when those eyes had been warm, when they had looked at her with something that felt like love. She tried to remember when that had changed and could not pinpoint the exact moment. It had happened so gradually that she had barely noticed until it was already too late. "Are you accusing me of something, Elena?" "I'm asking a question." "No." His voice was flat, dismissive, the tone he used with employees who had disappointed him. "You're being paranoid. Again. This is exactly why I don't tell you things anymore. Everything becomes a drama with you. Everything becomes a crisis. I buy a gift for an important client, and suddenly I'm on trial in my own home." I didn't say anything about a trial. I just asked. You asked in that tone, that suspicious tone that implies I'm doing something wrong. After everything I've built, everything I've given you, this is the thanks I get. Suspicion, accusations, drama. He stood up abruptly, his drink sloshing in the glass. "I'm going to bed. I have an early meeting tomorrow with people who actually appreciate what I do for them. Try not to let your paranoia keep you up all night, inventing problems that don't exist." He walked past her, toward the bedroom, without another word, without a goodnight kiss, without even a glance in her direction. Elena stood alone in the kitchen, with her hand on her pregnant belly, telling herself she was being crazy. She wanted so badly to believe she was being crazy, because the alternative was too terrible to contemplate. 10 years earlier, Elena Kingsley had been working full-time as a bookkeeper at a small accounting firm while taking night classes at community college. She was quiet and serious, the kind of student who always sat in the front row, always read the assigned chapters before class, always raised her hand with thoughtful questions that made the professor smile. Her brothers worried about her. They had always worried about her, ever since their parents' divorce when she was 12 and Derek was 19 and Mark was 16. Derek had stepped into the role of protector, working construction jobs to help pay for her school clothes and her braces and her college applications. Mark had been her cheerleader, the one who made her laugh when she wanted to cry, the one who convinced her she could do anything she set her mind to. But Elena had always felt like she was living in their shadow. Derek was building a construction company. Mark was launching a startup. They were both so confident, so sure of themselves, so successful in ways that made Elena feel small and ordinary by comparison. She wanted something of her own, someone of her own, a life that belonged to her and not to the Kingsley family legacy. Marcus Marshall walked into Business Fundamentals 20 minutes late on the first day of class, all charm and apologetic smiles. He scanned the room for an empty seat and found one next to Elena, who was busy highlighting key passages in the textbook she had already read twice. "You look like you actually understand this stuff," he whispered, leaning close enough that she could smell his cologne, something clean and masculine that made her pulse quicken despite herself. "I do." "Teach me?" She should have said no. She had her own studying to do, her own grades to worry about. But something about his smile, something about the way he looked at her like she was the most interesting person in the room, made her say yes. She taught him everything. Not just the coursework, but how to organize his thoughts, how to present himself in interviews, how to read the patterns and numbers that told the real story of any business. She spent hours in the library with him, explaining concepts that came naturally to her, but seemed like foreign languages to him. He was a fast learner when he wanted to be, and he made her feel seen in a way no one else ever had. "Your brothers don't like me," he said one night, 6 months into their relationship. They were sitting in his tiny apartment, eating takeout Chinese food and pretending they could afford something better. "They're just protective. They're controlling. They treat you like a child, Elena, like you can't make your own decisions. They just worry about me. They don't trust you. There's a difference." He took her hand, his eyes earnest and sincere. "I trust you. I think you're brilliant. I think you could do anything you want if your family would just let you breathe for once." Elena had never thought about it that way before, but the more Marcus talked, the more she started to see her brother's concern as something else, as criticism, as control, as a lack of faith in her ability to run her own life. "You don't need their permission to be happy," Marcus said. "You don't need anyone's permission except your own." 2 years later, her grandmother passed away and left her $47,000. It was not a fortune by any measure, not enough to retire on or buy a house with. But it was everything her grandmother had managed to save over 80 years of careful living, and it came with a letter that Elena kept in a drawer and read whenever she needed to remember what love looked like. "My dearest Elena, this money is not a gift. It is a seed. Plant it wisely, water it with hard work, and it will grow into something that no one can take from you. I believe in you, my darling girl. I always have. Love, Grandma Rose." Marcus had an idea. Delivery logistics. The market was changing fast with online shopping and same-day delivery expectations. Regional carriers could compete with the big national players if they were smart and fast and willing to work harder than anyone else. He just needed seed money to prove the concept. "We could build something amazing," he told her, his eyes shining with the kind of vision that made people follow him anywhere. "Something that's ours. Not your brother's company, not your family's legacy, ours together." Elena wrote the check. $47,000 from her grandmother's inheritance, everything she had except for the letter and the memories. She also did the books, the taxes, the route planning, the customer service, the late-night emergencies when drivers got sick or trucks broke down or clients demanded impossible delivery windows. She worked 80-hour weeks while Marcus did the sales, the handshakes, the charm. He was good at the charm. He was very good at it. Marshall Logistics grew faster than either of them had imagined. First year, $200,000 in revenue. Second year, $800,000. Third year, $2 million. By year 5, they hit $5 million, and Marcus hired what he called a professional management team. "You should focus on the house, babe," he told her over dinner at a restaurant they could finally afford. His smile was the same smile that had won her over in that community college classroom. "I've got this now. You've worked so hard, and you deserve a break. Let the professionals handle the day-to-day stuff." Elena was pushed out of the company she had helped build, not fired exactly, just gradually excluded from meetings, removed from email chains, left out of decisions that she had always been part of before. When she complained, Marcus told her she was overreacting, that she was too stressed, that she needed to relax and enjoy the success they had built together. She told herself it was fine. They were partners. What was his was hers. The company might have his name on the sign, but the marriage meant they were equals in everything that mattered. She stopped talking to her brothers around the same time. Marcus had been working on that for years, planting seeds of doubt, pointing out every perceived slight, reinterpreting every well-meaning comment as criticism or control. "Derek thinks I'm not good enough for you," Marcus said after one family dinner. He basically said so. He didn't say that. He just asked about our financial plans. That's saying it without saying it. He doesn't trust me. He doesn't think I can provide for you. That's not fair. He's just being careful because he cares about me. He's being controlling because he doesn't think you can make your own decisions. Just like always. Just like your whole family has always treated you. The arguments got worse. Derek called Marcus arrogant. Mark called him a snake. Marcus called them toxic, jealous, determined to destroy Elena's happiness because they couldn't stand to see her succeed without them. Elena chose Marcus again and again and again until the choosing became permanent, until the distance became a wall, until 6 years passed without a single phone call or birthday card or holiday dinner. Her brothers reached out. She found out later that they never stopped reaching out. But Marcus checked her phone, deleted messages, told her they had given up on her, and she believed him because she wanted to believe that her marriage was the most important thing in her life. 2 years ago, after 5 years of trying, Elena discovered she was pregnant. She cried when she saw the positive test, cried harder when the doctor confirmed it, cried hardest when they told her it was twins. Marcus seemed happy about it. He bought champagne, even though she could not drink it, and talked about nursery colors and baby names and the legacy they would build together. But he was working later, traveling more. There was a new head of operations, a woman named Vanessa Cole, whom Elena met exactly once at a company party. Vanessa had shaken Elena's hand and smiled a smile that did not quite reach her eyes. She wore a red dress that cost more than Elena's entire outfit, and she looked at Marcus with a familiarity that made Elena's stomach twist. "So you're the wife. Marcus talks about you." A pause, loaded with meaning. Sometimes. Elena told herself it was just office politics, just a competitive employee trying to make the boss's wife feel small. It happened all the time in business. It was not just office politics. Now standing alone in her cold penthouse apartment with a receipt for a $12,000 necklace she had never received, Elena could no longer tell herself comfortable lies. She decided to surprise Marcus at the office the next day. His favorite lunch from his favorite deli. Pastrami on rye with extra mustard, coleslaw on the side, a pickle wrapped in wax paper, a cream soda because he always said it reminded him of being a kid. His assistant, a nervous young woman named Brittany, who had been with the company for 6 months, tried to stop her in the hallway outside his office. "Mrs. Marshall, he's in a meeting. Maybe you should wait in the conference room while I let him know you're—" No. Elena opened the door anyway. Marcus was on the leather couch in his corner office. Vanessa was with him. Her blouse was open, revealing lace that was definitely not appropriate for a professional setting. His hand was on her thigh, sliding upward, and around her neck, catching the afternoon light streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows, was a diamond pendant that sparkled like 47,000 broken promises. $12,000. Tiffany and Company, 47 stones, 2.3 carats. The sandwich bag slipped from Elena's fingers and hit the floor with a soft thud that seemed to echo in the sudden silence. Marcus did not apologize. He did not jump up from the couch or push Vanessa away or stammer excuses like a man caught in a mistake he regretted. He just looked at Elena with something that might have been annoyance, might have been contempt, as if she had interrupted an important business call rather than caught him with his hand on another woman. "You shouldn't have come here, Elena. This is a workplace. We've talked about this." Vanessa stood slowly, deliberately, making a show of buttoning her blouse one button at a time. She smoothed her skirt and adjusted the diamond pendant at her throat with the casual confidence of someone who had won a game Elena had not even known they were playing. "Mrs. Marshall, finally." Vanessa's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. I've been wanting to meet you properly. Marcus has told me so much about you. A pause, letting the silence stretch into something uncomfortable. Well, he's told me you exist. Elena could not breathe. Her chest felt tight. Her vision was blurring, and the babies were kicking frantically as if they could sense their mother's distress. She turned and walked out before either of them could see her face crumble, before her legs gave out, before the sob building in her throat escaped and gave them the satisfaction of seeing her completely broken. She made it to the elevator before the tears came. That night, Marcus came home with a man in a gray suit carrying a leather briefcase that probably cost more than Elena's first car. The man had the bland, professional smile of someone who made his living delivering bad news to people who could not afford to hear it. "We need to discuss the future," Marcus said, spreading papers across the kitchen counter, where Elena had once planned their wedding reception, where they had laughed and dreamed and promised to love each other forever. The papers were divorce filings. The terms were simple, printed in legal language that somehow made cruelty sound reasonable. Elena Marshall was entitled to nothing. "The house is in the company's name," Marcus explained, his voice patient, like he was teaching a slow student. "Technically, you've been living in corporate housing. The cars are leased to the company for tax purposes. Our accounts have been restructured over the past year for better financial management. Everything is where it should be, where it's always been." "I put in $47,000 of my own money," Elena said, her voice barely above a whisper. "My grandmother's inheritance. I worked 80-hour weeks for 3 years. I built the accounting system from scratch. I handled every client complaint, every delivery problem, every crisis that came up at 3 in the morning while you were sleeping. Prove it." Marcus leaned forward, and his voice was soft, almost gentle, almost kind. The voice of a man who was very good at making women believe whatever he wanted them to believe. All the early records were lost in that office flood. Remember? The one 3 years ago? Very unfortunate. All those founding documents, investment records, partnership agreements, all gone. The insurance company was very sympathetic, but there was nothing anyone could do. Elena remembered the flood. She remembered how calm Marcus had been about losing all those important documents, how he had shrugged and said these things happen and moved on without a backward glance. She remembered thinking it was strange at the time that he should have been more upset about losing years of irreplaceable records. Now she understood. The flood had not been an accident, it had been a strategy. He had planned this. Maybe not from the very beginning, maybe not from the day he sat next to her in that community college classroom and asked her to teach him. But at some point, he had started planning, erasing her contributions, hiding money, building a case for a divorce that would leave her with nothing. "You can fight this," Marcus said, standing up and straightening his tie, "but you'll lose. You have no documentation, no witnesses, no money for lawyers, and in about 2 months, you'll have 2 newborns to take care of, alone, without a job, without a house, without a support system." He gestured at the lawyer, who began collecting the papers with practiced efficiency. "Sign the divorce papers, Elena. Take the settlement I'm offering. $50,000 and the minivan. It's enough to start over somewhere else, somewhere far from here. It's more than you deserve, honestly, but I'm feeling generous." Elena did not sign. Marcus nodded to his lawyer, as if this was exactly what he had expected. "Then you can leave tonight. Security will escort you out of the building. You have 20 minutes to pack whatever you can carry." 20 minutes later, Elena sat on the curb outside her own building, rain beginning to fall from a slate-gray sky. She had her purse, her phone, and the clothes she was wearing. Nothing else, not even a photograph of her grandmother, not even the letter that had accompanied the $47,000 inheritance. She was 7 months pregnant with twins, It was December, and the rain was cold. She scrolled through her phone, looking for someone, anyone, to call. Her mother's number went straight to voicemail. Her sister did not answer. Her friends, she realized with a horrible, stomach-dropping clarity, had all drifted away over the past 6 years. One by one, Marcus had convinced her to cut ties with anyone who might have supported her through something like this. She thought about calling her brothers, Derek, Mark. She had not spoken to them in 6 years. Marcus had convinced her they were toxic, controlling, jealous of her success. She had believed him because believing him was easier than questioning her own choices. She could not face them now. The shame was too heavy, too sharp, too suffocating. She had chosen Marcus over them again and again and again. She had defended him when they expressed concern. She had told them to mind their own business. She had hung up on Derek when he tried one last time to tell her something was wrong. A car pulled up to the curb, an old Honda Civic with a dented fender, water spots on the windshield, and a woman behind the wheel who Elena had not seen in 3 years. Rosa Martinez had been Elena's neighbor in the apartment complex before the penthouse, before the money, before Elena had moved into a world where people like Rosa were invisible. Rosa was a nurse who worked double shifts to support herself and her teenage son. She was practical, kind, and utterly without pretense. She rolled down the window, rain spattering on the worn upholstery inside. Elena? Girl, what are you doing sitting in the rain like that? You're going to catch pneumonia. Elena looked up. She was too tired to pretend, too exhausted to maintain the facade of the successful wife with the perfect life. He threw me out, Rosa. I have nowhere to go. Rosa did not ask questions. She did not judge. She did not remind Elena of all the times she had not returned calls, had not shown up to barbecues in the courtyard, had slowly erased their friendship because Marcus said people from the old neighborhood were not the kind of connections a successful man's wife needed. Rosa just reached over and opened the passenger door. Get in the car, Elena. We'll figure out the rest later. Rosa's apartment was small by any standard, just 2 bedrooms for her and her teenage son Miguel, a cramped kitchen where every inch of counter space served multiple purposes, and a living room that doubled as a dining room when the folding table came out. It was clean but crowded, filled with the accumulated evidence of a life lived on careful budgets and hard work. It was the opposite of the penthouse, and Elena had never been more grateful for anything in her entire life. Rosa made tea while Elena sat on the second-hand couch, still shaking from cold and shock and the terrible understanding of how completely her life had collapsed. Miguel was at school, so the apartment was quiet except for the rain against the windows and the whistle of the kettle on the old gas stove. Here, Rosa pressed a warm mug into Elena's hands. Drink this, then tell me everything. Elena told her. The affair, the receipt from Tiffany's, walking in on Marcus and Vanessa in his office, the divorce papers that gave her nothing, the flood that had conveniently destroyed all evidence of her contribution to the company. Rosa listened without interrupting, her face carefully neutral in the way of someone who had learned not to show shock or judgment because both were useless when someone was drowning. When Elena finished, Rosa set down her own mug and looked at her with the practical directness that Elena remembered from their friendship years ago. So, what are you going to do about it? Elena stared at her. I don't know. I have nothing. No money, no proof, no documentation of anything. He's destroyed it all. He's been planning this for years. That's not what I asked. Rosa's voice was firm but kind, the voice of someone who had faced her own share of impossible situations and survived them. I asked what you're going to do. Because you have 2 babies coming who need their mama, to fight for them. So, what are you going to do? For the first time since walking into Marcus's office and seeing another woman wearing her betrayal around her neck, Elena stopped crying. She thought about her grandmother, about the $47,000 that had represented an entire lifetime of careful saving, nickels and dimes added up over 8 decades of making do with less so that something could be passed on to the next generation, about the letter her grandmother had written. This money is not a gift. It is a seed. Plant it wisely, water it with hard work, and it will grow into something that no one can take from you. Marcus had taken the money. He had taken 6 years of her life, her relationships with her family, her self-confidence, her belief in her own judgment. He had taken everything she thought she knew about love and marriage and partnership. But maybe he had not taken everything. I'm going to get back what's mine. Rosa nodded slowly, as if this was exactly the answer she had been waiting to hear. Good. Now drink your tea. We have work to do. The next morning, Elena took inventory of what she had left. Her old phone, still working, but Marcus paid the bill, so it would probably get shut off within the week. When he realized she wasn't going to sign the divorce papers and disappear quietly. She would need to get a new one, something prepaid that couldn't be traced or controlled. $340 in a personal checking account that Marcus had never known about. She had opened it years ago, before the marriage, and had kept it as a small rebellion against his insistence on knowing where every penny went. He had never found it because he had never thought to look. She was just the wife, after all. Just a woman without secrets or resources, or the ability to plan for her own survival. Her purse, her identification, the clothes she was wearing, the practical flat shoes she had chosen for the surprise lunch visit that had turned into the worst day of her life, and her brain, which had once been sharp enough to catch a $30,000 embezzlement at her old accounting job, using nothing but receipts and a gut feeling. She started making lists. It was what she did. It was what she had always done. Even before Marcus, even before college, even as a teenager, organizing her homework and her chores and her plans for the future. Lists made chaos manageable. Lists turned overwhelming problems into actionable steps. Lists gave her something to control when everything else was spiraling beyond her grasp. Rosa watched her write, a small smile playing at the corner of her mouth. There she is. There's the Elena I remember. Elena looked up from her legal pad, covered in neat handwriting and bullet points and questions that needed answers. I need to see my old boss, Diane Crawford. Diane Crawford had taught Elena everything she knew about forensic accounting, following money through shell companies and hidden accounts, finding the patterns that people tried to hide, building cases out of receipts and bank statements, and the small mistakes that even careful criminals eventually made. Diane had retired from the big accounting firm where Elena had worked, but she had not retired from work itself. She had started her own forensic accounting consultancy, specializing in exactly the kind of case Elena was now facing, divorces, where one spouse had systematically hidden assets and erased evidence. Diane's office was in a modest building downtown, nothing flashy, sandwiched between a dentist and a real estate agency. But the diplomas on the wall were from Yale and Stanford, and the client list included some of the most difficult divorce cases in 3 states. Elena Kingsley. Diane looked older than Elena remembered, her hair grayer, her reading glasses thicker, but her eyes were just as sharp, taking in Elena's rumpled clothes and exhausted face and the obvious pregnancy with a single assessing glance. My best junior accountant, the one who caught the Harmon embezzlement with nothing but receipts and a gut feeling. It's Elena Marshall now. I know who you married. Diane's voice was carefully neutral, giving nothing away. I also know you quit accounting to focus on the home. Always wondered about that decision. You had real talent. Diane, I need help. Sit down. Tell me everything. Elena explained it all. The investment from her grandmother's inheritance. The years of work, building Marshall Logistics from nothing. The slow exclusion from the company she had helped create. The convenient flood that destroyed the records. The affair. The divorce papers. The fact that on paper, she was entitled to nothing, because on paper, she had never existed. When she finished, Diane was quiet for a long moment, her pen tapping against her notepad in a rhythm Elena remembered from their days working together. You have no documentation? Marcus destroyed it all. Or he thinks he did. What do you mean by that? Elena took a breath. This was the moment of truth. Either she had something to work with, or she had nothing at all. I was the bookkeeper for Marshall Logistics for the first 3 years. I did everything. Every receipt, every invoice, every tax document passed through my hands. And I was trained by you, Diane. What's the first rule you taught me about financial documentation? For the first time, something like a smile crossed Diane's weathered face. Always keep backup copies. Multiple copies, stored in multiple locations. Never trust that original documents will be there when you need them. I have bank statements from my old accounts going back 10 years. I have emails because I never deleted anything important. I have my grandmother's letters that specifically mention the $47,000 gift and its intended purpose. I have paper copies of the first 3 years of tax returns that I kept in a safety deposit box before Marcus convinced me I was being paranoid. Elena paused, feeling something like hope for the first time in days. And I have my memory. I remember every transaction, every vendor, every route we planned, every client we pitched. I remember things he doesn't even know I remember. Diane leaned forward, interested now. That's a start. It's not proof by itself, but it's a foundation we can build on. She paused. I should tell you up front, I don't work for free. My standard rate is $400 an hour, and cases like this typically require 200 to 300 hours of work. Elena's stomach dropped. She had $340 to her name. She could afford less than 1 hour of Diane's time. I have $340 to my name right now. I know. I can tell by looking at you. Diane slid a paper across the desk. That's why I'm offering you a different arrangement. Contingency fee. I work your case as if you were paying full rate. If we win and you recover assets, I take 20% of whatever we get. If we lose, you owe me nothing. Why would you do that? You don't even know if I have a case. Because I've seen this story 100 times, Elena. More than 100. Successful man builds a business with help from his wife, then decides she's served her purpose and needs to be discarded. And most women don't fight back because they can't afford to. They don't have the money for lawyers, the evidence for courts, the energy for a battle that can take years. Diane extended her hand. You have everything except the money. And I hate men like your husband. I've built my entire second career around making them pay for what they do. So, do we have a deal? Elena shook her hand. That night, Rosa's kitchen became a war room. Elena spread papers across the table, bank statements from her old accounts, printouts of emails she had forwarded to herself years ago when she first started to feel uneasy about how things were going. Her grandmother's letters in their faded envelopes, tax documents she had copied and stored without really knowing why. Miguel, Rosa's 17-year-old son, helped her organize everything into folders on his laptop. He was good with computers, headed to community college next year, with plans to study information technology, and he approached the task with the careful attention of someone who understood that details mattered. Ms. Marshall, you really kept all this stuff? He stared at the stack of statements and receipts, some of them so old the paper was starting to yellow. My grandmother always said, paper doesn't forget. People do. I guess I took that to heart. Rosa came in with sandwiches, insisting that Elena needed to eat for the baby's sake, even if she did not feel hungry herself. You really think you can prove he stole from you? Not stole exactly. He was smarter than that. What he did was erase me, made it look like the company was always his idea, his money, his work, made it look like I was just the wife who stayed home and spent his earnings. Elena picked up one of her grandmother's letters. The paper soft from years of handling, but he made one mistake. What? He thought I was just the wife. He never respected what I actually did, which means he never thought about what I might have kept. He never imagined I would fight back because he's spent 6 years convincing me that I'm powerless. She looked at Rosa and Miguel, at the small kitchen table covered in the evidence of her past, at the life that was slowly coming back into focus. He was wrong about me. 1 week later, Diane called with news that changed everything. I found something interesting about that flood, the one that supposedly destroyed all your early records. Elena gripped the phone tighter. What did you find? I pulled the insurance claim that Marshall Logistics filed after the water damage. The company received $42,000 in compensation for destroyed documents and equipment. But here's the thing. Diane paused, and Elena could hear the satisfaction in her voice. The water damage was only to one filing cabinet, one single cabinet out of 23 in that storage room. And guess which cabinet was affected? The one with the founding documents. Exactly. Partnership agreements, investment records, original incorporation papers. Your name was on all of them before the flood. After the flood, mysteriously, only versions without your name existed. Every other cabinet in that room was completely untouched. Elena closed her eyes. She had suspected, but hearing it confirmed was different. It made it real in a way that suspicion alone could not. He targeted it deliberately. It gets better, or worse, depending on how you look at it. I checked the timing. The flood happened 3 days after you asked Marcus about coming back to work part-time. Remember that conversation? Elena remembered. She had been getting restless, feeling useless in the big, empty penthouse, while her husband built an empire with money she had given him. She wanted to contribute again, to feel like a partner instead of a kept woman. Marcus had told her the timing was not right. The company was at a critical stage. She would just get in the way. She should focus on preparing for the baby they were trying to conceive. 3 days later, the flood. He was already planning this, Elena said slowly, the pieces falling into place. With horrible clarity. He was already erasing me. That conversation made him accelerate his timeline because he realized I might start asking questions. There's more. I made some calls to contacts I have in various courthouses. Your husband was married before. Elena's blood went cold. What? Patricia Wells. They married in 2012 and divorced in 2015. The divorce was sealed by court order, which usually means one party paid a lot of money to keep the details private. But I have a friend who works in records, and she was able to give me the broad strokes. He told me he had never been married before. He said I was his first love, his only love. He said he had been waiting his whole life to find someone like me. He told a lot of people a lot of things. The pattern looks similar to what he's doing to you. Patricia Wells received a settlement, but the terms were heavily skewed in his favor despite the short duration of the marriage. I'm trying to reach her now. If he ran the same playbook on her that he's running on you, we might be able to establish a pattern of behavior. Elena hung up and sat in Rosa's small living room, staring at the wall but seeing nothing. Marcus had done this before. He had married another woman, used her, discarded her, and moved on without a backward glance. And then he had found Elena, and he had done it all over again. She had been a target. From the very beginning, she had been a target. Her hands were shaking. But not from fear this time. From anger. 3 weeks later, Elena stood in a courtroom for the preliminary divorce hearing. She was represented now by a lawyer Diane had recommended, a woman named Catherine Reeves, who specialized in high-asset divorces and worked on contingency for cases she believed in. Catherine was 53 years old, had been divorced twice herself, and approached family law with the aggressive precision of a surgeon removing a tumor. They presented their evidence. Bank records proving the $47,000 transfer from Elena's personal account to the business account that would become Marshall Logistics. Emails showing her involvement in daily operations, her signature on vendor contracts, her name copied on client correspondence. Tax returns from the first 2 years listing her as a company officer. A designation Marcus had quietly removed in year 3 without telling her. Expert testimony from Diane Crawford about the suspicious nature of the flood, the statistical improbability of water damage affecting only one cabinet, the pattern of document destruction that suggested deliberate action rather than accident. Marcus's lawyer, a silver-haired man named Richard Thornton, who charged $800 an hour, objected to everything, called the evidence circumstantial, called Elena emotional and confused, suggested that she was fabricating claims out of spite because her marriage had ended and she could not accept responsibility for her own failures. The judge was a woman in her 60s named Margaret Holloway, who had presided over family court for 23 years and had very little patience left for games. "Mr. Marshall," Judge Holloway said, peering at Marcus over her reading glasses, "I'm looking at bank records showing a $47,000 transfer from your wife's personal account to your business account in 2015. Are you claiming she had no stake in this company?" Marcus shifted in his seat. It was a gift, a loan. She agreed to invest without expecting anything in return. She wanted to support my dream. "Which is it, Mr. Marshall? A gift or a loan? Because those are very different things legally, and you've just claimed both in the same sentence." Marcus's lawyer requested a continuance to review the newly presented evidence. The judge granted Elena emergency relief instead. $8,000 per month in spousal support, effective immediately. The right to return to the family home pending final resolution of the divorce, because a woman 7 months pregnant should not be sleeping on a friend's couch, while her husband lives in a penthouse she helped pay for. Elena moved back into the apartment that night. She walked through the rooms that had once felt like a prison and now felt like something else entirely, a battlefield, a place she had every right to be. She slept in her own bed, wrapped in sheets that still smelled faintly of the life she had lived before everything fell apart. She walked through the nursery, touched the cribs she had spent weeks choosing, the mobile she had hung herself because Marcus was too busy with work. For one moment, just one, she allowed herself to believe she might actually win. 2 weeks later, she came home from a doctor's appointment to find the locks changed again. Marcus was inside the penthouse with Vanessa and a new lawyer, a younger man with hungry eyes and an expensive watch. He opened the door, but blocked her from entering, his body filling the doorway like a wall. "The house is in the company's name. I'm the CEO. This is a corporate asset, not a family home. You're trespassing on company property. The judge ordered access to the family home. This property was transferred to a different corporate entity 6 days ago." Marshall Holdings, LLC. Check the deed yourself. The family home no longer exists. There's only corporate real estate. He smiled. That same smile from 10 years ago in that community college classroom. Charming, confident, empty of anything resembling human warmth. You're good, Elena. Better than I expected, honestly. But I'm better. I've been doing this longer than you've been paying attention. Behind him, Vanessa waved, her diamond pendant catching the light. Bye, Mrs. Marshall. Don't forget to write. I hear prison pen pals are very popular these days. The door closed in Elena's face. She stood on the sidewalk outside her own building, rain beginning to fall again, because it was December, and the weather seemed determined to match her circumstances. Her hospital bag was in that penthouse, her clothes, the nursery she had spent weeks preparing, the letters from her grandmother that she had brought from Rosa's apartment, everything. That night, the stress finally became too much. Elena started having contractions at Rosa's apartment. Sharp pains that came in regular intervals, too early, too soon. Rosa recognized the signs immediately. We're going to the hospital. Now, don't argue with me. The emergency room was bright and cold and full of people moving with purpose. They put Elena in a bed, hooked her up to monitors, brought in a doctor named Patterson, who had kind eyes and a calm voice. You're not in active labor yet, Dr. Patterson said, after the examination, but you're showing signs of severe preterm stress. The babies are fine for now, but I'm putting you on complete bed rest. No stress, no physical activity, no work of any kind. I can't do that. I have a court case. I have evidence to gather. I have, Mrs. Marshall. Dr. Patterson's voice was firm. If you don't rest, you will deliver these babies at 32 weeks instead of 40. They'll spend their first month in the NICU instead of in your arms. Is that what you want? Elena lay in the hospital bed, staring at the ceiling tiles, listening to the beep of monitors and the distant sounds of the emergency room. Her phone buzzed. A text from a number she didn't recognize. He did this to me too. I have proof. Call me. Patricia Wells. Elena called Patricia Wells from her hospital bed the next morning, after a sleepless night of monitoring and medication and nurses who checked on her every hour. Patricia's voice was guarded at first, careful, the voice of someone who had learned not to trust easily. She had clearly spent years building walls around herself, protecting the wounds that Marcus Marshall had left behind. But when Elena explained her situation, when she described the affair, and the divorce papers, and the convenient flood, and the changed locks, something shifted in Patricia's tone. It's the same playbook, Patricia said, and there was a tremor in her voice that might have been anger or relief, or both. Exactly the same, word for word. The isolation from family, the financial control, the slow erosion of your confidence, and then the sudden discovery that all the records are gone and you have no proof of anything. How did you find me? LinkedIn. I've been watching him for 12 years. I set up alerts for his name, his company, anything related to him. I saw the news about the fraud investigation, and I started digging. When I found your name, I knew. I knew exactly what he was doing to you, because he did it to me first. Why didn't you fight when it happened to you? A long pause. Elena could hear Patricia breathing on the other end of the line, could almost feel the weight of years of regret and shame. I was too scared, too ashamed. He made me think I was crazy, Elena. He would say things that weren't true, and then insist I had misremembered. He would promise things, and then deny ever promising them. By the time I realized I wasn't imagining everything, I had already signed away everything. I was so desperate to get away from him that I took whatever he offered just to be done. So, why now? Why reach out to me after all this time? Because you're fighting. I watched the court records, saw the motions your lawyer filed. You're not giving up like I did. And if you're fighting, maybe we can win together. Maybe I can help you avoid the mistakes I made. Elena felt something shift in her chest. Hope, maybe, or determination, or the simple relief of knowing she was not alone. What do you have? Everything. Patricia's voice hardened, with 12 years of accumulated fury. I kept every document he made me sign, every bank statement that showed money moving to accounts I didn't control, every email where he contradicted himself or admitted things he later denied. I kept it all because I always knew, that someday there would be another woman, and I wanted to be ready. Patricia sent the file that night. Emails, bank records, corporate documents from the time of her marriage to Marcus. Legal agreements that showed how he had structured things to leave her with nothing. And most importantly, proof that Marcus had opened accounts in his mother's name, his mother who had been dead for 5 years at the time. Those accounts were still active, still receiving transfers from Marshall Logistics, still hiding money that should have been part of the marital estate that Elena was now entitled to. This was not just divorce fraud. This was criminal fraud on a massive scale. Elena could not leave her hospital bed, so she brought the fight to her instead. Rosa visited every day, bringing food from the apartment and updates from the outside world. Miguel set up a laptop on the hospital tray table and helped Elena organize the growing mountain of evidence. Diane called with updates on her forensic investigation. Patricia sent documents, and Detective Sharon Burke from the Financial Crimes Unit started taking a very serious interest in Marcus Marshall. Elena coordinated everything from that hospital bed, monitors beeping softly beside her, babies kicking in her belly, like they were cheering her on. Thus, the investigation uncovered more than anyone had expected. The accounts in Marcus's dead mother's name held $2.1 million, accumulated over 3 years of small transfers designed to escape notice. It was systematic theft from his own company, money that should have been declared as profit and taxed and divided in any divorce proceedings. Vanessa Cole's name appeared on another account with $800,000 in it. She probably didn't even know where the money had come from or what it was really for. She was a signature on paper, nothing more. A fall guy being set up to take the blame if anything went wrong. And then there was the memory that had been nagging at Elena for weeks. Something Marcus had said at a company party 2 years ago when he'd had too much champagne and his guard was down. He had bragged about a private investment that no one could trace. Something about the future of money, about being ahead of the curve, about security that no government or ex-wife could ever touch. Elena searched her old emails. Marcus had used her email as a backup for important passwords because he thought she would never look. And her account was less obvious if anyone investigated him. He had always underestimated her, always assumed she was not paying attention. She found it buried in a folder she had never opened. A seed phrase. 12 random words that looked like nonsense unless you knew what they meant. She gave the information to Detective Burke. The cryptocurrency wallet contained $1.8 million in Bitcoin. Total hidden assets discovered, $4.7 million. Detective Burke reviewed everything with the careful attention of someone who had spent 20 years building cases against people who thought they were too smart to get caught. This is enough for criminal charges, Burke said during one of her visits to Elena's hospital room. Wire fraud, tax evasion, money laundering. We can build a solid case that will hold up in court. But I need someone inside the company to testify. Someone who signed off on these transfers. Someone who can explain what they were told and what they actually knew. Everyone looked at the same name. Vanessa Cole. Elena's first attempt to turn Vanessa failed completely. She arranged a meeting at a coffee shop near the hospital, neutral ground where neither of them would have an advantage. Rosa drove her there against the doctor's orders because some things were more important than bed rest. Vanessa arrived looking smug, her hair perfect, her makeup flawless, her outfit probably worth more than Rosa's car. She clearly believed Elena wanted to beg for mercy, to plead for some crumb of compassion from the woman who had stolen her husband. Elena slid a folder across the table instead. Patricia's documents, the account in Vanessa's name, the criminal liability she was facing without even knowing it. He's using you, Elena said quietly, the same way he used Patricia Wells before me, the same way he used me for 6 years. And when this all falls apart, and it will fall apart, you'll be the one holding the bag. Your name is on that account. Your signature authorized those transfers. You'll go to federal prison for 10 years while he walks away clean. Vanessa's smile did not waver. Nice try. But Marcus and I are partners. Real partners. Not like whatever arrangement you thought you had. We're building something together. We're in love. You're a signature on an account full of stolen money. That's not love. That's a liability. Vanessa stood up, pushing back from the table. With practiced grace. You're pathetic, Elena. You lost. Your husband chose me. Your family abandoned you. And now you're sitting here pregnant and desperate, trying to convince me that I'm in danger. She laughed, a cold sound without humor. Accept it. Move on. Find some other man to leech off of. She walked out without looking back. 3 days later, Vanessa called Elena's hospital room. Her voice was different this time, shaking, scared. The account. The 800,000. It was 800,000 3 days ago when you showed me those papers. Elena sat up in the hospital bed. And now? There's 12,000 left. He's been transferring it out. To accounts I don't recognize and countries I've never heard of. He's getting ready to run, and when he does, my name is still on that account. The account that's been emptied. The account that will show I had access to hundreds of thousands of dollars that have now disappeared. Now you understand what I was trying to tell you. Silence stretched between them, filled with the sound of Vanessa's breathing and the distant beep of hospital equipment. That bastard. That absolute bastard. He told me we were partners. He told me I was different from you. You are different from me. You're next. You're the one who's going to take the fall when everything collapses. He's already setting you up. More silence. When Vanessa spoke again, her voice was smaller. What do you want from me? Testify. Tell Detective Burke everything you know. Every transfer you signed. Every account you helped set up. Every lie he told you to get your cooperation. I'll go to prison. You'll get a deal. Reduced charges. Probation instead of prison time. But only if you cooperate first, before they arrest him, before his lawyers have time to pin everything on you. The longest silence yet. I need to think about it. She hung up. 2 days later, Vanessa still had not called back. But something else happened instead. The $20 million contract that Marshall Logistics had been about to close, the deal with a major retail chain that would have doubled the company's value, suddenly fell through. Market conditions, the retailer announced publicly, a strategic decision to explore other options. But Elena knew better. Someone had leaked information to the retailer about the fraud investigation. Someone had made sure they knew exactly what kind of company they were about to do business with. That someone was Vanessa Cole. She had not cooperated with Elena or the police, but she had gotten her revenge on Marcus in her own way, destroying the deal that meant everything to him. The company's market value dropped from $40 million to $15 million overnight. Marcus was scrambling, his lawyers in emergency meetings, his investors demanding answers, his carefully constructed empire beginning to crumble. And that was when Vanessa finally called back. "I'm in. Tell me where to meet the detective." Everything came together faster than Elena had dared to hope. Vanessa's testimony provided the inside view that prosecutors needed. She explained how the transfers worked, how the accounts were structured, how Marcus had convinced her to sign documents without reading them because he said it was just paperwork, just formalities, just the boring stuff that business required. Patricia's documentation established a pattern of behavior stretching back 12 years. This was not a one-time mistake or a moment of weakness. This was a systematic approach to marriage as a business transaction, with the wife always ending up with nothing. Elena's reconstructed financial records proved her contribution to Marshall Logistics, her investment of $47,000, her years of work building the company that now bore her husband's name and none of her fingerprints, the Bitcoin wallet, the dead mother's accounts, the suspicious flood, the locked doors and the changed deeds, and the endless lies upon lies upon lies. Detective Burke arrested Marcus at his office on a Tuesday morning in late January. The footage was beautiful in its simplicity. Marcus Marshall, in handcuffs, being walked past the company sign with his name on it, his face a mask of disbelief as photographers captured his fall from grace. He had never believed any of them would fight back. He had spent so many years manipulating women, convincing them they were crazy or worthless or alone, that he had forgotten some women eventually remember who they really are. The divorce hearing reconvened 3 days after the arrest, with Marcus under criminal indictment, facing charges that could put him in prison for decades. His lawyers had lost all leverage. They could posture and threaten. But the facts were no longer in dispute. Judge Holloway read the interim settlement with something that might have been satisfaction. Elena Marshall was awarded 65% of all marital assets, approximately $9.75 million after debts and penalties. Full custody of the unborn twins. The family home, legitimately transferred this time through proper legal channels. All attorney fees to be paid by Marcus. Elena was wheeled out of the courthouse in a wheelchair because she was still on bed rest, still under doctor's orders to minimize stress and physical activity. But she was victorious against all odds, against a man who had planned her destruction for years, against a system that usually favored people with money and lawyers and the ability to wait out their opponents. She had won. Rosa squeezed her hand as they reached the car. "You did it." Elena looked at the blue sky above them, at the world that had nearly crushed her, at the life that was slowly coming back into focus. We did it. All of us. For one moment, just one, she allowed herself to believe it was over. It was not over. 1 week after Marcus's arrest, his lawyers filed an emergency motion for custody of Elena's unborn children. The argument was carefully constructed to seem reasonable, presented by attorneys who charged $1,000 an hour to make cruelty sound like concern. Elena was homeless, they claimed, living with a friend rather than in a stable residence. Elena was unemployed, with no demonstrable income or career prospects. Elena was mentally unstable, supported by a psychiatric evaluation from a doctor who had never actually met her but had been paid handsomely by Marcus's family to provide a professional opinion based on Marcus's descriptions of her behavior. The motion included statements from Marcus's mother, his mother who had been dead for 5 years. Someone was impersonating a dead woman to manipulate the court system, to steal children from their mother, to continue Marcus's pattern of destruction even from a jail cell. The judge scheduled a hearing. If Elena could not prove stability by the time the babies were born, if she could not demonstrate that she was fit to be a mother, Marcus could get custody. He could take her children from her without ever leaving prison. Then came the call from her sister. Sarah had not returned Elena's calls in months. Not since before the divorce papers. Not since Marcus first started laying the groundwork for Elena's isolation. Elena had assumed her sister was just busy, or that the old distance between them had grown too wide to bridge, or that Sarah had chosen to believe whatever lies Marcus was telling about her. But Sarah had not been busy. She had been talking to someone who claimed to be Marcus's mother. Elena, I've been doing some thinking about all of this. Sarah's voice was tired, confused, the voice of someone who had been manipulated without knowing it. Mrs. Marshall called me. She says you've been lying about everything. She says you're trying to destroy her son for money. She says the affair never happened. The fraud is all made up. You're just a bitter woman trying to punish a good man for falling out of love with you. Elena's blood went cold. His mother is dead, Sarah. She's been dead for 5 years. I attended her funeral. What? No, I spoke to her just yesterday. She called me from her house in Florida. She was crying about what you're doing to her son. Sarah, listen to me carefully. Marcus has someone impersonating his dead mother to manipulate our family. I don't know who, but it's not real. None of it is real. He's lying to you the same way he lied to me for 6 years. I don't know what to believe anymore. Sarah's voice cracked. He seemed like such a nice man. You seemed so happy. But now the police are involved, and there's all this money, and I think maybe you should stop this, Elena. For the sake of the children. Whatever happened between you and Marcus, those babies deserve a father. Those babies deserve a mother who isn't being gaslit by her own family. Sarah hung up before Elena could say anything else. Her own sister did not believe her. Her own sister thought she was the villain of this story. The stress was finally too much. That night, Elena went into labor. Real labor this time, not the warning contractions that had sent her to the hospital before. Her body had decided the time had come, ready or not, and there was nothing anyone could do to stop it. Rosa drove her to the hospital, breaking speed limits and running red lights, while Elena gripped the door handle and tried to breathe through the pain. The delivery was fast, faster than anyone expected. Elena had spent months preparing for this moment, reading books and watching videos and imagining how it would go. None of it had prepared her for the reality of bringing 2 lives into the world while her own life was falling apart. But she did it. She pushed through the fear and the pain and the exhaustion and the uncertainty. At 3:47 in the morning, Emma Kingsley came into the world screaming, her lungs strong, and her fists clenched as if she was already ready to fight. At 3:52, James Kingsley followed his sister, quieter but just as determined, his eyes open and alert, as if he was taking in everything around him. Elena held them both, one in each arm, and cried for reasons she could not fully explain. Joy and terror and love and exhaustion all mixed together into something that had no name, something that felt like the beginning of a new world. When she woke hours later, groggy from the delivery and the medications, there was a message on her phone. From Marcus. Congratulations on the birth of my children. My lawyer will be in touch about the custody hearing. See you in court. Even from a jail cell, he was still trying to destroy her. Rosa found Elena crying in the hospital bed at 3 in the morning, the twins sleeping peacefully in their bassinets while their mother fell apart. Elena, talk to me. I can't do this anymore. The words came out broken, jagged, barely coherent through the tears. He has money for lawyers, endless money. He has people pretending to be his dead mother to manipulate my family. He has my own sister thinking I'm crazy, and I'm sitting here with 2 newborn babies, and absolutely no one. Rosa sat on the edge of the hospital bed, her face calm, but her eyes fierce. You have me. You've done too much already. I can't keep asking you for help. I can't keep taking advantage of your kindness. You have your own life. your own problems. Stop. Rosa's voice was firm, in a way that Elena had rarely heard. You can't keep what? Accepting help? That's not weakness, Elena. That's survival. That's what human beings do for each other when things get hard. She took Elena's hand, her grip strong and steady. You know what I see when I look at you? I see a woman who was thrown out of her own house with nothing. No money, no support, no proof of anything. And instead of giving up, instead of taking the easy settlement and disappearing like he wanted, she built a case that put her husband in handcuffs. You did that. You. Not some rich family. Not some powerful connections. Just you and your receipts and your stubborn brain. Elena looked at her babies. Emma, James, so small, so helpless, so completely dependent on her to fight for them. What if I lose? Then you lose, and you appeal, and you fight again, and you keep fighting until you win or until there's nothing left to fight for. Rosa squeezed her hand. That's what we do. That's what mothers do. Elena wiped her eyes. The fear was still there, heavy and cold in her chest, but something else was there too. Something that felt almost like determination. I need to make a call. Elena had not spoken to her brothers in 6 years. 6 years of silence because Marcus had told her they were toxic. 6 years of missed birthdays and holidays and ordinary Tuesdays when she could have called just to say hello. 6 years of believing that the man she married was the only family she needed. She had chosen Marcus over them again and again, defending him when they expressed concerns, dismissing their warnings as jealousy or control, cutting them out of her life because he convinced her that was what love required. Now she sat in a hospital bed with 2 newborn babies and nowhere else to turn. She dialed Derek's number at 6 in the morning, her hands shaking so badly she almost dropped the phone twice. He answered on the second ring, as if he had been waiting for this call for years. Elena? Derek, I need help. There was a pause, and Elena braced herself for what she deserved. Anger, resentment. I told you so. The justified fury of a brother who had been cut out of his sister's life because she chose wrong. Instead, he said, Where are you? Mercy General Hospital. I just had twins, and I'm in trouble. I'm on my way. I'll call Mark. He hung up before she could apologize, before she could try to explain, before she could say any of the things she had rehearsed in her head for years but never had the courage to speak. 6 hours later, her brothers walked into her hospital room. Derek looked older than she remembered, grayer at the temples, lines around his eyes that had not been there before, but his eyes were the same, steady and calm and completely unreadable, until you got to know him well enough to see the emotions he kept locked away. He stood 6'3", with the build of a man who had spent decades building things with his own hands before he started building an empire. His shoulders were broad, his hands were calloused despite his expensive suit, and when he looked at Elena, there was nothing in his face but concern. Mark looked almost the same as he had 6 years ago, still handsome, still charming, still carrying himself with the easy confidence of someone who expected good things to happen. But there was something sharper about him now, a focus that had not been there before. The startup world had changed him, given him edges he had not possessed as a younger man. They met the twins first, stood at the foot of Elena's bed, and looked at their niece and nephew with expressions that made Elena's chest ache with regret for all the years they had missed. Derek reached out and let baby Emma grip his finger. His face softened in a way Elena had almost forgotten was possible. She's beautiful. They both are, Mark said, watching James sleep. You did good, sis. Then they sat down, one on each side of her bed, and Elena told them everything. 6 years of isolation. How Marcus had convinced her that her family was the problem, that they were toxic and controlling and jealous of her happiness. The affair, the fraud, the flood that destroyed the evidence, the divorce papers that gave her nothing, the changed locks, the custody fight, the fake mother calling her sister. When she finished, the room was silent except for the soft sounds of the baby's breathing. Derek was still, his face unreadable. Mark was pacing at the foot of the bed, unable to contain his energy. "Why didn't you call us sooner?" Mark finally asked, and there was pain in his voice rather than accusation. "I was ashamed. I chose him over you for years. I told you to mind your own business. I hung up on Derek when he tried to warn me. I didn't think—" She had to stop, swallow the lump in her throat. "I didn't think you would come. You didn't think we'd come. No." Derek spoke for the first time since she started telling her story. His voice was quiet, but it filled the room. "We would have come, anytime, for any reason. That's what family does. I know that now." Derek nodded slowly, accepting her words without judgment. "What do you need?" Elena took a breath. This was the moment of truth. She was asking for help from people she had hurt, people she had abandoned, people who had every right to tell her to solve her own problems. "I need to end this. Not just the divorce, that's almost done. I need to end his power over me, over my children, over my life. He's still fighting from jail. He's got a custody hearing in 2 weeks where he's going to try to prove I'm unstable. His lawyers are going to argue that I'm unfit to be a mother. How can we help? He has a meeting with a judge tomorrow to argue for joint custody. Vanessa is supposed to testify that I'm unfit, that I'm dangerous, that I'm not capable of caring for children. I need to confront her. Make her understand that testifying against me is the worst decision she can make." Derek and Mark exchanged a look that Elena remembered from childhood. The silent communication of brothers who had spent their whole lives watching each other's backs. "And you need us there because? Because when she sees I'm not alone anymore, she'll fold. She's a coward. She only attacks when she thinks she's winning. If she sees that I have family, real family, who will fight for me, she'll back down." Mark stopped pacing. "When do we leave?" The Meridian Hotel was exactly the kind of place Marcus Marshall loved. All marble and crystal, designed to make people feel small and expensive at the same time. Every surface gleamed. Every employee moved with practiced efficiency. Every detail screamed money and power and success. Elena walked into the lobby 24 hours after being released from the hospital. She was exhausted, still sore from the delivery, running on coffee and determination. Rosa was watching the twins at the apartment. Her brothers were somewhere behind her, waiting for their cue. Vanessa was at the concierge desk, giving instructions to staff members who jumped at her every word. She looked nervous in a way Elena had never seen before. The legal situation had changed everything. Marcus was in jail awaiting trial. The company was hemorrhaging value. The future she had been promised was evaporating like morning fog. When she saw Elena, her face hardened into familiar contempt. "You're not supposed to be here. This is harassment. I'll have you arrested. I'm here to give you one last chance, Vanessa. Don't testify tomorrow." "Or what? You'll sue me?" "You already did. You'll have me arrested? I'm not the one who committed fraud." "No, but you signed documents that make you look like you did. I'm here to offer you a way out. Refuse to testify. Tell the truth about what Marcus asked you to do. Walk away from this before it destroys you completely." Vanessa laughed, a brittle sound without humor. "You're desperate. You have no leverage, no power, no way to hurt me. Marcus told me all about you, how pathetic you are, how you begged him not to leave you. And now you're here, trying to threaten me? It's sad, honestly. I'm not threatening you. I'm warning you. There's a difference. The only thing I'm hearing is a woman who lost and can't accept it. Vanessa's hand went to her Bluetooth earpiece. Security. I need security in the lobby. Now. She turned back to Elena, smug again. You should have taken the settlement when Marcus offered it. $50,000 and the minivan. It was more than you deserved. Now you're going to get dragged out of here like the crazy person you are. No one coming to save you. The elevator dinged. Vanessa turned, expecting security guards. Men in blazers who would grip Elena's arms and escort her out of the building, while hotel guests watched and whispered. But the men who stepped out of that elevator were not wearing blazers. They wore suits that cost more than most cars, Italian wool and custom tailoring, the kind of quiet luxury that screamed power louder than any logo ever could. Derek Kingsley, 6'3", built like someone who had spent decades building things with his own hands before he started signing contracts worth millions. Mark Kingsley. The easy charm of a man who could sell ice to penguins, but underneath that charm was something sharper. Neither brother was smiling. Vanessa's composure cracked. Her perfect smile faltered. Her confident posture stiffened. Who the hell are you? Elena stepped forward. For the first time in months, possibly years, she felt like herself again. These are my brothers. Derek Kingsley, CEO of Kingsley Construction. Marcus Kingsley Jr., CEO of Greenhall Logistics. She watched Vanessa's face change as the other woman processed what she was hearing. Kingsley, Elena's maiden name. The family Marcus had told her was toxic and controlling and dangerous. The family Marcus had told Vanessa did not exist. I don't care who they are, Vanessa said, but her voice had lost its confident edge. Security will be here any moment, and all three of you can be escorted out together. Derek spoke, his voice calm and level. Actually, this hotel uses Kingsley Construction for all their renovation work. We just finished the new conference center last month. I called the owner on the way over here, and he was very interested to hear about the woman threatening his business partner's sister in his lobby. Vanessa's eyes darted to the concierge desk. The staff members, who had been ready to call security, were suddenly very interested in their computer screens. Mark stepped forward. Ms. Cole, my sister has offered you a deal. I strongly suggest you take it. You can't intimidate me. No one's intimidating anyone. We're just here to make sure my sister has a chance to speak without being dragged out by security. He paused. But since we're here, I should mention that Greenhall has been looking to acquire a last-mile logistics provider. Marshall Logistics would have been perfect, but with all the fraud allegations. He shrugged. Company's probably worth about $2 million now instead of 40. I wonder who the creditors will go after when it folds. Vanessa understood. If Marshall Logistics collapsed completely, she was not just a witness. She was a target. Everyone Marcus owed money to would come after anyone whose name was on those accounts. Her name was on a lot of accounts. I need to make a call. She stepped away, phone pressed to her ear. Elena watched her pace near the windows, watched her face change as whoever was on the other end spoke. She returned 5 minutes later. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something that might have been resignation or relief. I'm not testifying tomorrow. What? I called my lawyer. He advised me to cooperate fully with the prosecution. To tell the truth about everything Marcus asked me to do, it's my only chance of staying out of prison. Elena stared at her. You're going to testify against Marcus. I'm going to tell the truth. I should have done it months ago. She looked at Elena, and for the first time, there was something almost human in her expression. He told me you were nothing, that you were just the wife, that you'd never fight back. He was wrong. Yeah. Vanessa laughed bitterly. He was wrong about a lot of things. She walked away without another word. Elena looked at her brothers. Derek put a hand on her shoulder. Mark was grinning. That was worth the trip, Mark said. The look on her face when she realized who we were. Derek nodded. Let's go. You need to rest. Those babies need their mother healthy. They walked out of the hotel together, three siblings reunited after 6 years of silence. The December air was cold but clean, and for the first time in months, Elena felt like she could breathe. 2 days later, the custody hearing became a formality. With Vanessa's full cooperation and refusal to testify for Marcus, his legal team had nothing left. No credible witnesses, no leverage, no way to paint Elena as unstable when every piece of evidence pointed to Marcus as the criminal. The judge dismissed the custody motion in less than 10 minutes. Elena retained full custody of Emma and James. Marcus would have no rights to his children until the criminal case was resolved, and given the evidence against him, that resolution was not looking favorable for his side. The criminal case accelerated in the weeks that followed. Vanessa's testimony, combined with Patricia's documentation and Elena's carefully reconstructed evidence, created an airtight case that even Marcus's expensive lawyers could not crack. He pleaded guilty to avoid trial. His sentence was 7 years in federal prison. The final divorce hearing was almost anticlimactic after everything that had come before. Judge Holloway read the settlement into the record with something like satisfaction in her voice. Elena Kingsley, she said, using Elena's maiden name rather than the married name she had never really wanted. 65% of all marital and business assets, totaling approximately $9.75 million after debts and penalties, full custody of the minor children, Emma and James Kingsley, all properties previously transferred to shell corporations would be returned to the marital estate. Marcus sat at the defense table in an orange jumpsuit, smaller than Elena had ever seen him. He did not look at her. He signed the papers his lawyer put in front of him with the mechanical movements of a man who had finally run out of plays. The judge asked if he had anything to say before they finalized the divorce. Elena. His voice cracked. I'm sorry. I never meant for things to go this way. I loved you at the beginning. I really did. Elena looked at the man she had once believed was her soulmate. The man who had promised her forever and given her 6 years of careful destruction. Your Honor, I don't need his apology. I just need his signature on the papers. The judge almost smiled. Mr. Marshall, sign the papers. He signed. Elena walked out of the courthouse with her brothers on either side. Rosa was waiting in the car with the twins, both of them sleeping peacefully in their car seats. It was over. 3 years passed. The office occupied the second floor of a modest building in downtown Newark, above a bakery that made the whole stairwell smell like cinnamon and fresh bread every morning. The sign on the door read, Kingsley Financial Consulting, in simple gold letters. Beneath that, smaller, Forensic Accounting for Divorce and Family Law. Elena Kingsley sat at her desk, surrounded by papers organized in color-coded folders and labeled tabs. The system of someone who had learned that documentation was power. The office was modest. She could afford bigger now, much bigger, but this was enough. This was hers. On the wall behind her desk hung 3 things. Her CPA certificate, earned again after the divorce when she decided to rebuild her career on her own terms. A photograph of Emma and James at the beach, 3 years old, covered in sand and grinning. And her grandmother's letter, framed in simple wood. My dearest Elena, this money is not a gift. It is a seed. Plant it wisely, water it with hard work, and it will grow into something that no one can take from you. Love, Grandma Rose. Marcus had taken the $47,000, but he could not take what it had taught her. 3 years later, every character in the story had an ending. Marcus Marshall served year 4 of 7 at a federal prison in upstate New York. He lost everything. The company sold to creditors for pennies on the dollar, the properties foreclosed, the reputation destroyed beyond any hope of recovery. His mother's memory was disgraced by the accounts he had opened in her name. He wrote letters to the twins on their birthdays. Elena read them, did not respond, put them in a drawer. She would give them to Emma and James when they were old enough to understand what their father had done and why she had fought so hard to protect them from him. He would be out in 3 more years. He would be 41, broke, with a felony record that would follow him forever. He would have to start over with nothing. Elena did not wish him harm. She just did not think about him anymore. He took up exactly as much space in her life as he deserved, which was none at all. Vanessa Cole served 2 years of probation and 500 hours of community service. She was blacklisted from the logistics industry, could not find work in any related field, moved back to Ohio to live with her mother. She worked as a bookkeeper at a hardware store, a far cry from the corner office she had once occupied. 2 years after the trial, she sent Elena an email. "I am not going to apologize, because I do not think you want one, but thank you for warning me. I did not deserve your kindness." Elena did not respond. She did not need closure from Vanessa. She had built her own. Patricia Wells finally got the justice she had waited 12 years for. Her testimony was crucial to the criminal case. She wrote a blog about her experience that went viral, reaching millions of women who recognized their own stories in hers. Now she worked as an advocate for women in financial abuse situations, speaking at conferences, consulting with lawyers, helping other survivors find their voices. She and Elena met once a year for coffee. Not friends exactly, but connected by survival. Diane Crawford received her 20% contingency fee and called it the most satisfying payday of her career. She offered Elena a partnership at her firm. Elena declined, but they still worked together on referrals, still traded notes on difficult cases. Rosa Martinez lived in a townhouse 3 blocks from Elena's house, purchased and paid for in full. She had quit her second job, worked normal hours at the hospital, spent her weekends spoiling Emma and James rotten. Every Sunday meant dinner at Elena's house, Rosa cooking, the kids running wild in the yard. Miguel graduated from community college and got a job at Diane Crawford's firm as a junior analyst. Elena wrote his recommendation letter. Derek Kingsley expanded Kingsley Construction to $15 million in annual revenue. He helped Elena understand business ownership on her own terms. Not gifts, just advice. He offered her a CFO position twice. She declined twice. He respected her more for saying no. They talked every week now, 6 years of silence, slowly being filled. Mark Kingsley closed his Series A funding round for Greenhall. $12 million raised from investors who believed in his vision. He wanted to invest in Elena's consulting firm. She said no. He understood. He was godfather to James. Derek was godfather to Emma. Emma and James Kingsley were 3 years old. Elena had changed their last name after the divorce was final. They did not know their father was in prison. They were too young. Elena told them Daddy made some bad choices and had to go away for a while. Emma had Marcus's eyes, but Elena's stubbornness. James was quiet, thoughtful, loved books. They would know the full truth someday. But for now, they were just kids. They deserved to be just kids. Pastor William Hayes, Marcus's uncle, who had initially sided against Elena, called her after the trial to apologize. "I let family loyalty blind me to the truth. I am sorry for what I said about you. Elena accepted his apology. She did not forget, but she accepted. He was not part of her life, but she did not hold grudges. It took too much energy. And Elena Kingsley herself. The phone rang in her small office above the bakery. She answered on the second ring. Kingsley Financial Consulting. A woman's voice, shaky and uncertain. Hi, my name is Melissa. Someone gave me your number. My husband, I think he's hiding money. I don't have any proof. I don't even know where to start, and I'm scared. Elena reached for a fresh notepad. She had heard this story before. She had lived this story before. Melissa, you're not crazy, and you're not alone. She began to write as Melissa talked, the same way Diane Crawford had once written while Elena talked. The same careful attention to detail, the same patient questions. First, tell me everything from the beginning. Through the window, afternoon sunlight fell across Elena's desk. The twins were at preschool, learning letters and numbers. Rosa would pick them up at 3. Derek would call tonight to check in. Mark was coming for dinner on Sunday. She had rebuilt everything Marcus had tried to take from her: her career, her family, her sense of herself as someone capable and strong. But the best thing she had built was this: the ability to say to another woman what someone had once said to her. You have more power than you think. Let me show you how to use it. And meaning it. The lesson. Elena's story teaches us 3 powerful truths. First, documentation is power. Keep records. Keep backups. Keep copies in places no one knows about. Paper doesn't forget, even when people do. Second, isolation is the weapon of abusers. When someone convinces you to cut off your family, your friends, your support system, that's not love protecting you. That's control preparing to destroy you. Third, it's never too late to fight back. Elena was 7 months pregnant with nothing but $12 and her brain. She rebuilt everything. So can you. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of someone you know, if it gave you hope, please take 2 seconds to hit that like button. Drop a comment below and tell me what part of Elena's story hit you the hardest. Share this with a woman who needs to hear it. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss another story of women who refuse to stay broken. Because every share, every like, every comment helps this story reach another woman who might be sitting alone right now, thinking she has no options. You might just save someone's life today. And this content has been carefully researched, developed, and manually edited to deliver meaningful lessons and real value. Every detail was crafted to inspire, educate, and empower women facing their darkest moments. Thank you for watching until the end. Asterisk.